This week on the FliteCast, the Golden Globes kick off award season 2026. Why should we care? I've got some thoughts on that. Plus, should Marvel Studios be taking a cue from James Gunn and DC Studios when it comes to Scooper Madness? And we need to talk about Starfleet Academy and Wonder Man, two new franchise shows premiering this month with different promotional problems. All of that next on the FliteCast. Welcome to the FliteCast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope everybody is having a decent January so far. It's been tumultuous in the real world, to say the least. That's for damn sure. Last week was crazy. Last week was really crazy, to the point where a lot of us were unwilling to suspend our suspension of disbelief, if you will, with respect to things going on in the real world. But you know what? The show does go on, and we still need our escapism. We still need our Hollywood fix of movies, TV, and other assorted media to go on. And it just so happens that tonight, as of the time of me recording this, there are people lined up on the red carpet at the Golden Globe Awards right now. Award season 2026 is in full swing, will be in full swing after tonight. I know the Critics' Choice Awards were a couple of nights ago, or like last week, but really the Golden Globes is what starts it off as far as like the predictors, because after that you have the BAFTAs, you got the SAG After Awards, which I think they're calling them the Actor Awards now. They used to be called the SAG Awards, but after the two unions merged, they changed the name for that. You got all of that, and it leads up to the Oscars, obviously, in March. And so, yeah, this is it. This is award season, and we'll talk a little bit about that because there have definitely been some heightened emotions with respect to award season this year in certain movies and expectations, if you will. And, I just want to level set my expectations and just give you an idea of where I'm coming from with respect to award season and what I'm going to do for it this year, truthfully, because I've kind of pushed it off to the side the last number of years. It's been a roller coaster for me with award season. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Plus, I got to reference a surreal moment that I had on Threads with respect to Marvel Studios and its relationship to DC Studios, because an individual that I have followed for a number of years and have kind of watched, her empire, if you will, grow a lot bigger and become a much bigger influencer and reviewer and individual, said something that I never thought she'd say. And it's crazy still to this day that she's saying it, and I 100% agree with everything that she's saying, and I'll get into that here in a little bit as well. And then I'm going to talk about a couple of new shows, Starfleet Academy and Wonder Man, and the two different challenges that both of those shows are facing, even though they're both premiering here in the next couple of weeks. Starfleet Academy, of course, this week on the 15th, and then Wonder Man next week on the 24th. We'll get into all of that, but of course, before diving headfirst into this week's show, I want to remind everybody that this show and all of my other shows can be found at theflightcast.com or on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/theflightcast. You can find this show. You can find Flight Chat, which we did our episode yesterday. A lot of feedback. A lot of feedback from the usual suspects. Some good conversation, some good talk, reminiscing on what our favorite movies of 2025 were and looking forward to all the movies we're going to see in 2026. Some strong opinions, one way or the other, about Avatar, Fire and Ash, and also I wasn't expecting to talk so much about the Michael Jackson biopic that's coming out later this year, but I did have a good talk about that thanks to some feedback, among other things, and then added a couple of movies to my list that I did not have on my list last week for 2026. Added a couple more movies to my list thanks to our very intrepid listeners, our very long-time listeners. Thank you so much for all of that, but that was good. So Flight Chat is now on Saturdays, rather. Pardon me, the feedback show. And it was a little late. I did release it a little bit later because it was a bit of a delay on Saturday, but I still got it going. This show, the FliteCast, the main show, will be on Sundays now, leading into the week to start off the week. And then we've got other shows with respect to Flight Review, which I'll definitely be doing more episodes of that. Those will be on Fridays when I go see a movie, one of the theatrical presentations that we're talking about for 2026. And also this week, I might try and do an episode of Flightbox. I would like to, truthfully, because with Starfleet Academy releasing, I definitely want to watch that, and I definitely want to have a conversation about what's going on with that particular show going forward. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That's on the main show, or that's on at theflightcast.com rather, or at youtube.com/theflightcast. If you want to listen to my show on YouTube, you most certainly have that option. And of course, I also want to take a moment to thank all of the very loyal patrons at patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that you've been enjoying all of the bonus content. I will let you know that tomorrow's episode of Flight Speed on my way home from work will be about the Golden Globes, because obviously I'm not going to be watching the awards live tonight as they're happening, because after I record and post this episode, I got to go to bed because I got work in the morning, very early in the morning. But I will definitely be commenting on the aftermath of the Golden Globes tomorrow, and that's what tomorrow's episode of Flight Speed is going to be. And that, of course, is available to all members of patreon.com/theflightcast. Flight Speed every Monday, and usually Friday Flight every Friday, and or Saturday Soliloquy on Saturdays. I did not post either one of those this past week. I apologize. Not the best start to 2026 with respect to that show. But tomorrow, Flight Speed, definitely talking about the aftermath of the Golden Globes, who won and who didn't win, and how everybody is treating the conversation with respect to that, because I'll know it. I'll fully know it. Like, as soon as I'll probably know it when I get up, but certainly when I get to work and whatnot. And there'll be plenty of conversations with respect to it. But either way, stay tuned for that. And also stay tuned for more episodes of Flightbox, special episodes of Flightbox for TV review, flight review, for all the movies that aren't theatrically released that I still need to get caught up on. Those will be posted at Patreon. And also Flight Report, when I start getting back into comics here, seriously. We were talking about this the other day on Vodka Stream, and there's still a good amount of comics. They will not stop talking about this absolute DC Universe run that's been going on lately. People have been loving it. Phil Barker and William from Sci-Fi Center and many others have been thoroughly enjoying what they've been doing with Absolute Batman and the Absolute DC run, which apparently is available for DC Universe Infinite subscribers. So yeah, definitely need to get into that, as well as finally get caught up on all the comics that all of you have read that I still haven't read over the years. Definitely need to do that. So stay tuned for those episodes of Flight Report coming up this year as well. Lots of bonus content that is available at patreon.com/theflightcast, and more coming up this year. Thank you to those of you very loyal subscribers. Hope that everybody is enjoying the bonus content there. So let's talk about award season for a second. The 2026 award season is kicking off tonight. I know, again, technically the Critics' Choice Awards happen, but really it's the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes are really what kicks off the awards season, because this is where the circuit starts, right? After this, you've got the actor awards, you've got the BAFTAs, and it all leads into the Oscars, right, in March, right? So this is where the circuit begins, and this is where all the predictors, for who's going to win the Oscars start to really round into form. And, we've got a list of usual suspects, and the Critics' Choice Awards kind of kicked it off a little bit, but really tonight, the Golden Globes, which will either be over as of the time of you listen to this episode, or maybe you're listening to this episode as the Golden Globes are airing, potentially. This is why I'm not talking about winners, because as the time of me recording this, I don't know who's won. This is in the past with respect to the Golden Globe winners. But don't worry, like I said, I'll talk about that on Patreon on the way home tomorrow on Flight Speed. But with respect to award season, I have noticed this, and I do want to talk about this, because I've had a very up and down relationship with award season over the years. And back in the day, I mean, we're talking 15, 20 years ago, when I was a traditional undergrad in college, my friends and we used to watch the Oscars every year. And it wasn't just that we would watch the Oscars every year. We would also watch all of the Best Picture nominees every year and try to get our own gauge on what we thought was the best films of the year, what should win Best Picture. And mind you, because of how long ago this was when there was still only 5 nominees for Best Picture back in the day. I forget, what year did they change that? Was it 2009? 2010? Somewhere around there. Somewhere in the late 2000s was when they expanded it to about 10 or 11 Best Picture nominees. And really, that coincided with the explosion of the comic book shared universe franchise, really the MCU, right? And the volume of films that were, obtaining notoriety with the public, that were bigger than any of the Oscar fare, right? And it was kind of twofold, because it wasn't just about more bigger fare, like bigger movies, bigger franchise movies making a big explosion. It was also because the Oscars for all these years have been trying to draw the general audience in for ratings, right? The Oscars have never been like a massive ratings push for ABC, right? It hasn't been like nowhere near the numbers for like Monday Night Football or like any other major events that ABC has done over the years, right? And this is why like the announcement, what was like a month or so ago when they said that the Oscars will be moving to streaming in like 2028, 2029. That's why it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all because quite honestly, it's never been made for a television audience, not a general television audience. The Oscars are not for that. The Oscars are truthfully for fans of film. They're truthfully for Hollywood. I will never forget, film school, our instructor, our department director told us that the Oscars was, one night every year where Hollywood got together to give themselves a pat on the back. That's really what it is. That's really what the Oscars are. And that's really the extent of what those awards mean, to be honest with you. It's not like winning an Oscar, is the same as winning like a Nobel Peace Prize or a Pulitzer in that regard, right? There's no academia involved. And that's not to denigrate the Oscars whatsoever, but it is to, highlight for the rest of us the actual importance of what the Oscars mean. The importance of the Oscars isn't really for us, right? Nothing about this actor or this film winning an Oscar changes our lives inherently, unless we live so vicariously through these people that it changes, that we decide to make it change our lives in that regard. Really, the Oscars are for the people in the industry. And that's what I came to realize. Is that back in the early 2000s, when we were watching all these movies, we were treating it like scoreboard mentality. We had a rooting interest. We're like, okay, we're rooting for Scorsese to finally win his first Oscar, right? I was rooting for Renee Zellweger to win in the year that she got nominated as Roxy Hart in Chicago, and of course she lost out to Nicole Kidman, who played Virginia Woolf in The Hours. And I remember, I saw both of those movies, right? I saw both of those films, and I still to this day feel that what Renee Zellweger did in Chicago was superior, subjectively speaking, to what Nicole Kidman did as Virginia Woolf in The Hours. And that's nothing against Nicole Kidman or her performance. She won that Oscar, and that's that. But to me, we can go down the list, and I'm sure there are plenty of years where so and so won an Oscar and somebody else should have. I continue to say that the fact that Samuel L. Jackson did not win Best Supporting Actor for Jules Winfield in Pulp Fiction, and instead it didn't even go to Gary Sinise for Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. It went to Martin Landau for Ed Wood, a movie I still haven't seen and do need to see. And I've heard from people, yes, he deserved it. Okay, all right, you know what, fine. It's all subjective. It is what it is. But the fact of the matter is, the rooting interest that we have, the scoreboard mentality that we give the Oscars, I think it's too toxic now. And that's just the nature of social media. That's the nature of rage baiting and engagement and attention whoring and a whole lot of other things that we're going to talk about with the next topic after this. But to me, I'm at this point now where when it comes to awards season, it is no longer about me having a rooting interest for a movie or a rooting interest for actors or directors or writers. It's not about that anymore. And I'm seeing that rise again. I mean, this happens every year, but this is going to be arguably a more heightened emotional year because of Sinners, truthfully. Those of us that had such a massive, cultural, not awakening, but just a cultural experience and just an incredible cinematic experience, a transcendent experience watching that film in theaters. We are going to feel differently about that film. We still do feel differently about that film than we have others. I've seen the reactions after the Critics' Choice Awards. It was kind of predictable to me, right? Because one battle after another won Best Picture. Paul Thomas Anderson, the director of that film, won Best Director. So, no nod for Sinners, no nod for Ryan Coogler, even though that film did win 4 Critics' Choice Awards. I think it won Best Ensemble Cast, which, of course, yes, certainly, I would agree with that. But there also wasn't any love for Michael B. Jordan because Timothée Chalamet won Best Actor for Marty Supreme. And it's one of those cases, we talked about this a little bit on Vodka Stream the other night as well over on Dave the Film Junkie's channel. It's a situation where you can't blame Paul Thomas Anderson, you can't blame Timothée Chalamet, you can't blame the movies, One Battle After Another or Marty Supreme, respectively. It's just the way that a lot of us feel. There was no movie in 2025 that topped Sinners. None whatsoever. And so now what we're dealing with we're dealing with a scenario where whatever happens at the Globes, and again, we'll find out, if it's anything less than Sinners winning Best Picture, Best Motion Picture Drama, and Ryan Coogler winning Best Director, and Michael B. Jordan winning Best Actor, if it's anything less than that, there's going to be a decent section of the fandom, a decent section of movie fans on social media that are going to be pissed off, going to be outraged, and they're going to definitely voice their outrage the second somebody else wins that award, right? Whether it is Paul Thomas Anderson, whether it is One Battle After Another, whether it is Marty Supreme or Timothy Chalamet, they're going to voice their displeasure. And it's going to be rampant, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to be, the racism, right? That's going to be the tinge of it. And look, yeah, because I'm not going to mince words with you guys. I don't mince words about this. I've said before, we should never be fearful about talking about race and these other societal things because they most certainly impact our lives. And of course, race has always been an issue with the Oscars. It's always been an issue with the Academy. The hashtag Oscar so white didn't come from nowhere. I mean, that literally came from a concern that people had that there are too many, the representation within the Oscars is not representative of what the actual world is. Too many white nominees and not enough brown nominees. Really not enough black nominees. But I extend that to brown nominees as well because I feel like Asians and Latinos most certainly are also a part of that as well. But and I've said before that that's such a surface level complaint because the problem isn't the Oscars. Once you get to the awards, it's already too late, right? It's a scenario where the Academy has an issue with the diversity within its ranks. Over 6,000 members, do you have enough black and brown representation with respect to actors and directors and creatives and writers and whatnot? That is the real issue that the Academy has to tackle. And until they're willing to do that, you're always going to have a scenario where it's, vast majority of nominees are white in the Oscars. Because once you get to the Oscars, it's too late. You have to change the membership. You have to provide you have to build a more diverse membership, a membership that is more emblematic of the content that we're seeing, in society and whatnot, more emblematic of that equality, if you will. And that's the bigger issue with respect to the Oscars inherent. But I know a lot of people are going to be pissed if Sinners doesn't win. There are going to be a lot of people and specifically if Sinners doesn't win Best Picture, if Ryan Coogler doesn't win Best Director, and if Michael B. Jordan doesn't win Best Actor. Now, the Best Actor thing, I can already tell you what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, he played two characters, we can't give it to him for both characters, and we couldn't pick which one was better, Smoke or Stack, right? Because they didn't want to do a disservice to the other characters. So by virtue of that, Chalamet wins almost by default in that regard. And again, this is no fault of Michael B. Jordan. It's no fault of Timothy Chalamet. It isn't whatsoever. It would be the Academy saying, well, we can't give it to an actor because he played two roles in the same film as twins. We're going to give it to somebody who gave their all to one role, right? And the biggest thing when having this type of discussion is that if you are somebody that disagrees with that, like if Timothy Chalamet wins and you disagree with that, it's nothing on Timothy Chalamet. Anybody blaming Timothy Chalamet for his performance in Marty Supreme, that is absolutely not fair. And I haven't seen the movie. I've not seen the movie yet, but I will. It's absolutely on my list because I also decided, because I talked about, going into the year, I said, well, I want to see these Best Picture nominees. I do, and there's a good amount of them. But, initially I was like, I got to see them before the Golden Globes. Well, no, that was way too ambitious. That gave me less than 2 weeks to watch all of them. So now what I'm going to do is between the Golden Globes and the Oscars, I want to watch all of them before the Oscars. So I've got to see One Battle After Another. I've got to see Marty Supreme. I've got to see Hamnet. I've got to see these other, nominees, right? I've seen Sinners. I own Sinners, right? I don't have a problem watching it again, and I'll certainly watch it again. I saw it twice in theaters, right? And I own that damn movie, Inglourious Steelbook. So I have no issues watching it again. But my point is that none of the other talent that wins in place of Sinners is to be blamed whatsoever. That is not fair. They are putting forth their art. They're putting forth their effort. They're doing the same thing that Coogler and company are doing, right? And the voters, whoever it is, the writers and whatnot, they're the ones choosing the other films or choosing Sinners in whatever category. But, specifically those three categories, right? Because Sinners could win in a whole bunch of other categories. Sinners could win for, visuals. Sinners could win for Ludwig Göransson could certainly win for best score yet again. He won for Black Panther, for crying out loud. So, like, that there are other categories that Sinners could most certainly win Golden Globes and Oscars in, but it's really going to be those three that if it doesn't win, it's going to drive the outrage, right? Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. And to me, I'm not going to feel outraged. I'm not. And the reason I'm not going to feel outraged is because one, I'm already expecting that they're not going to get that. And yes, there is a racial component to that. I am not saying the Academy is inherently racist. I'm not saying the Academy is overtly racist. I am saying that institutionalized racism over decades and generations of the Academy's existence is there. It is prevalent. And the thing about institutionalized racism is it's not always blatant. It's not always obvious. A lot of times it's subtle. A lot of times it's just how people operate, people's mindset and what they're thinking. So am I sitting there going, okay, you didn't vote Sinners for Best Picture, you were clearly racist? No, I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that over the course of our exposure, over the course of our involvement and our, our the media that we consume, the movies that we consume from Hollywood, we kind of just get into the headspace where we expect to see certain things, certain actors and certain actresses and certain writers and certain directors win these particular Oscars on a consistent basis. And whether we mean to or not, that's where we gravitate toward when it comes to award season in that regard. It's really got to be this standout political thing. And again, not red and blue politics, politics of Hollywood, politics of studios campaigning for an actor, campaigning for a film, like Training Day, or when the same year when Halle Berry won for Introducing Dorothy Dandridge, or when Jamie Foxx won for Ray. Like it's got to be one of those where it's like, okay, or even when Will Smith won, right? When Will Smith won his Oscar, the night that he slapped the shit out of Chris Rock still deserved it, even though Will Smith shouldn't have done it. But the night that that happened, the foregone conclusion was that he was going to win for King Richard. And we knew this. That night was supposed to be Will Smith's Oscar coronation, and Chris Rock did his best to ruin it. And Will Smith, unfortunately, helped him ruin it. But at any rate, the fact of the matter is, unless it's something like that, those are the moments that like transcend for a black actor or for a brown actor in that regard to win one of the high level awards, right? One of the non technical awards at the Oscars or at the Golden Globes or something like that. And so that it doesn't happen very often. That's why you get this whole Oscars so white thing. But to me, it's knowing what the actual issue is. Like I said, it's the Academy ranks and not the awards show itself. I'm not going to get frustrated over it. I mean, any frustration that I would have would be, again, not solving the Academy issue instead of, it's not about having more nominees, at the Oscars so that black people can get nominated or that brown people can get nominated. It's about having a more diverse makeup of the Academy in that regard. And at the end of the day, like I said earlier, these awards are not for us. They're for Hollywood. They're for those directors, they're for those writers, they're for those actors. And I will go back to, what was it, 2018, 2019, when Spike Lee got nominated for Black Klansman. Now, he won. It wasn't Best Director, either. I think it was Best Original Screenplay? I think it was, or either Best Original or Adapted Screenplay. Actually, I think it was Adapted. I think Black Klansman is adapted off of a true story, based off a true story. But at any rate, so when Spike Lee got his nomination, I remember watching, I said there was a cell phone video of him just jumping for joy in his apartment that he got nominated for an Oscar and he won it. And that was his coronation, right? Because Spike Lee's been in the game. He's been in Hollywood. He's been in the business for decades. His first film was what? She's Gotta Have It back in 1986, right? So he's been around for a long time. Didn't win for School Days. Didn't win for Do the Right Thing. Didn't win for Malcolm X. So many films. I mean, he was very much on the Martin Scorsese path with respect to winning an Academy Award, right? And just like Marty finally got his first Oscar ever for The Departed, Spike gets his first Oscar for Black Klansman. And to me, I was happy for his happiness. And that's what it really should be. That's what award season really should be. Be happy for those in Hollywood who are happy, those who it's important for, right? If you want Sinners to win Oscars, then you were rooting for Ryan Coogler's happiness. You were rooting for Michael B. Jordan's happiness. You're rooting for that cast and crew's happiness, right? It's nothing to do with you, right? It's not you inherently. You're not winning anything by them winning these Oscars. I mean, you may have some personal satisfaction, but you're not getting a check. you're not getting your own little golden statue in the mail if Sinners wins Golden Globes or Oscars and whatnot. No, you can be happy for Ryan Coogler. You can be happy for Michael B. Jordan. You can be happy for Ludwig Göransson. You can be happy for Rachel Ancherl and everybody else, or not Rachel Ancherl. I keep forgetting the name of his DP. It's not Rachel Ancherl. Rachel Ancherl is an actress from Star Trek, Star Trek Discovery. Sinners director of photography. I've Googled this before. Autumn Durald. There we go. Thank you, Autumn Durald. You can root for Autumn Durald to win, for like best cinematography or whatnot. And that would also be a great representation matters scenario for a woman, for a woman of her ethnic background to win an Oscar in that regard. You can root for that, and you can root for that significance, right? But at the end of the day, it's an uphill battle to climb with all these institutionalized systems and whatnot. And I just don't think that the outrage for the Oscars should be, communicated on social media as cheaply as it is. And whatever happens for the Golden Globes, whatever happens at the Oscars, I'm not going to get on social media and pound the pavement. I'm not going to say, this is an outrage. We need to do this. We need to boycott the Oscars. We need to boycott it. No, I'm not going to do that. Because again, I know where the ultimate problem is with respect to diversity. It's in the Academy ranks itself, not with the awards. And again, whoever wins these awards, it's not changing or affecting my life unless I choose to make it such, right? So I will root for Ryan Coogler's happiness. I will root for Michael B. Jordan and the cast and crew of Sinners' happiness. But at the end of the day, whether that movie wins Golden Globes or Oscars or not, it does not change how I felt in that movie theater. It does not change my thought process with respect to that film. It does not change the transcendent experience that I had as a black man watching that film with my fiance in theaters, right? Us as black people, it did not change the experience that we had in that theater watching it. It does not change the fact that I feel that movie is the best film of 2025. It doesn't matter what awards it wins or doesn't win, right? It can have all the accolades in the world. It can have none of the accolades. That film it exists. It is transcended. It was a massive hit for Warner Brothers, and it is a feather in the cap, and probably to this point is Ryan Coogler's magnum opus as a director. It is, for certain. Before that, I would have said Black Panther, but Sinners absolutely transcends Black Panther on a number of levels. And as much as I love Black Panther, certainly, I love both of those films, both the first one and the sequel. But yeah, the Oscars and the Golden Globes and award season isn't going to change that for me. And that I think is the most important thing that we should take away from awards season is don't let whether your favorite films and creatives win awards or not, don't let that impact how you feel about those creatives and about that work. It's not like, Sinners is cheapened or is lessened because it doesn't win certain awards. No, most certainly not, because it's all subjective. And you decide as an audience member how much of an impact or how impactful of a film Sinners is for you. You can't speak for everybody else because not everybody's it's not going to impact everybody. Certainly, if you're not black, it's going to impact you differently. It is. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy the film. It doesn't mean you can't understand the film. It just means that it's going to impact you very differently than it does any of us black people. And I'm sure there's some black people out there that it didn't impact, culturally speaking. I guarantee there's some black people out there. I don't know any personally, but I guarantee there's some that were just like, whatever, because of their walk of life, because of where they're at in life, because of their perspective. You know what? It's all subjective. They can feel however they want, right? I'm not going to go any further with that unless they take it further. But no, nothing about award season should ever cheapen the experience that you have watching a film. And it shouldn't cheapen the film itself or the directors or the writers or the actors or whatnot. You should feel just as strongly about them before and after they win or don't win awards as you did the first time you saw their work in that regard, right? The Oscars and the Golden Globes and the actor awards and the BAFTAs and all that and Critics' Choice, they are not moments of validation for you to signify, yes, my director's the best, or my favorite actor's the best, or my favorite writer's the best. No, it's not about that. It's not about that lazy ass scoreboard mentality. It is about them, being happy and achieving accolades in their life for their career because that's what they are working towards. But for us as fans, it should not affect our appraisal of the art form, not whatsoever. So, my best of luck to Sinners. I hope it does win a great deal of the Oscars. I would love to see it win Best Picture. I would love to see it win Yeah, I'd love to see Michael B. Jordan win Best Actor. I'd love to see Ryan Coogler win Best Director. I would love to see all those things happen. I would be very happy for all of them if they won that. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether they do or not, Sinners is still the best film of 2025 to me, and nothing is going to change that. Nothing is going to change my opinion on that. Even if I go back and retroactively watch, I'm confident watching when I watch Marty Supreme, when I watch One Battle After Another, I am confident that Sinners will still be number one on my list. I've made that choice. I've made that subjective choice. And you can call me being unfair to the other movies if you like. That's your business. But it doesn't mean I'm going to dislike One Battle After Another. It doesn't mean I'm going to dislike Marty Supreme or Hamnet or any of the other nominees. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that me personally, I've decided to place Sinners number one and cement Sinners number one for me as the best film of 2025. And nothing about these awards is going to change that for me. So, and I wish that was a perspective that more of us had with respect to these award shows, because the less that we get emotionally wrapped up in these award shows, the better, truthfully. The art form is the art form. And as long as your your favorite movie exists and you can watch it with impunity whenever you wish, especially if you're a proponent of physical media like I am, that's really all that matters, regardless of whatever Golden Globes or Oscars or anything else that it wins. So those are my thoughts with respect to award season for 2026 and honestly for going forward, truthfully. All right, now let's talk a little about Marvel Studios, because I saw something a couple of days ago on Threads that just stunned me and was a really surreal moment. I commented on it. I posted, I reposted, I quoted it on Threads when I saw it. Jamie Broadnax, who is the owner, operator, creator of Black Girl Nerds, someone that I've been following really for the last decade since the FliteCast started up. She was certainly one of the earlier bloggers, entertainment bloggers and whatnot, and influencers that I was watching. And her empire has just grown by leaps and bounds. Her website is far more professional than mine, and she's got a staff, and she continues writing, and she does all the reviews. She's on the press junkets and tours, and she talks to all these people. Like, she is definitely one of the bigger ones, without question. And I haven't agreed with everything she said. Most certainly, and certainly not during the DCEU days. And that's what makes this whole moment that I'm about to talk about even more surreal, because no, not every opinion that she's had about the DCEU I've agreed with. And John Rossler has been one of the people that's reminded me, well, because I do follow her on Threads, and it's like, okay, the thing is, I don't have to agree with everybody that I follow on Threads. Truthfully, I don't. And I don't have to block or mute everyone that I disagree with on Threads. It really just depends on what the disagreement is and how rude or not they are with respect to that disagreement. So Jamie's one of those that, with respect to Black Girl Nerds, I've always I appreciate and do. I'm happy that her website and everything that she's done, her whole empire exists. I really am. I'm very glad for that. It doesn't matter if I completely agree with her perspectives on DC films and whatnot, but she said something the other day that I thought was intriguing. She got on, did a video that she posted to Threads, and she said that, in fact, let me hear, I don't want to misquote her or paraphrase this. I'm going to go with exactly what she posted. So she posts this video, and the title of this on Threads, she literally says, quote, "There needs to be a James Gunn equivalent at Marvel Studios to shut down rumors." And man, did that catch my attention. And I watched the entirety of the video, and her whole video, it was just her, I don't want to say grousing, but it definitely grinds her gears, what's been going on lately with rumors in Marvel Studios. In particular, recently, this Blade rumor. And I didn't know what that was, truthfully, because I do my best, me. I don't follow Scooper Madness. I don't listen to Scooper Madness whatsoever. But apparently what happened recently was a couple of days ago, it was reported by one of the most notorious grifters in Scooper Madness that Marvel has completely shut down and eliminated, they've canceled the Blade movie. The Mahershala Ali Blade film, that project is completely and utterly canceled. It is not going to happen, right? And apparently this rumor was forwarded and picked up by so many other outlets. But here's the thing. There's a number of things with this. Number one, this rumor was started by Mr. Chattanooga FBI himself, Jeff Snyder. Had I known that from the beginning, I would have been like, oh, well, next, whatever, because never believe shit that guy says. Never believe a damn word that grifting POS says whatsoever, okay? This is the same man that months ago threatened James Gunn on another show, like on another YouTube show. He threatened James Gunn with spoiling Superman if he didn't stop debunking his lies, right? And that's why he's upset, because James Gunn is debunking his lies and basically calling his bullshit out in that regard. And so this is where I totally agree with everything that Jamie Broadnax of Black Girl Nerds is saying, because she's saying in her video that Marvel does need to employ someone to have a James Gunn response, right? Because James Gunn has been the debunker, right? He's earned that reputation. This is such a surreal moment for me as a DC fan, because being a longtime DC fan, I mean, go back 9, 10 years, guys. Seriously, go back to the Man of Steel days, go back to the BVS days, go back to the Justice League days, Wonder Woman and all that. Remember, Scooper Madness wound us up through the Snyder era into the Hamada era of DC films. Scooper Madness was constantly throwing shit at the wall to see how much of a rise they could get out of us. They ran rampant with rumors. They ran rampant with expectations, and this person had been cast, and this had been canceled, and that had been done here, and this test screening was horrible, and this executive said Wonder Woman was unwatchable, and all of this absolute nonsense that they would peddle to us on a regular basis. And Walter Hamada and the PR Brain Trust and Toby Emmerich and all that, all the morons in charge of Warner Brothers and DC Films at that time did absolutely nothing about it. And we came on social media, and we would talk on podcasts. We said that there is no controlling the narrative. There's nobody there to actually silence these morons, right? And we used to praise, there were people in the fan base that used to praise Marvel Studios for controlling the narrative because they could do no wrong. And there weren't any leaks. There was no massive speculation about anything that was going to happen in an Avengers film or in a Guardians film or in any other team ups, Thor Ragnarok or anything like that. Like, none of it ran rampant and everything was buttoned up because Marvel was just a freight train, of success in that regard. And they could do nothing wrong. They were walking on water as far as many fans were concerned. And they got praised for handling the PR narrative as best as they did, right? No trouble. And now it's crazy how the tables have turned. And it's interesting because many of us said for years that the MCU fandom, not Marvel Studios per se, but the MCU fandom needed a humbling. We said that for a long time, that they needed a humbling because they had so many fresh Rotten Tomatoes scores for their films and so much success box office wise. And it's like, okay, you guys think that your shit doesn't stink as far as your franchise, wait until you have to deal with turmoil. Wait until you have to deal with these sites turning on you. Wait until you have to deal with people second guessing what your franchise does. And it took a while, but we're there. We're absolutely there. The last year or two for Marvel Studios has been shaky. It has. It has been shaky. Their biggest success since since 2023 has been Deadpool and Wolverine. That's been their biggest financial success, right? Because you go back to like their last big year, and I said this on Vodka Stream the other night as well. Their last big year financially, theatrically speaking, was 2022. That's when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness made what, $955 million. And that's when Thor Love and Thunder made $760 million in the summer. And that's also when Black Panther Wakanda Forever made $859 million, doing a 2 hour and 41 minute tribute to the passing of Chadwick Boseman, which I, still absolutely applaud their decision to do that with that particular film. But Marvel made nearly $3 billion at the box office in 2022. That's the last insanely successful year that they've had in the MCU. Because the following year after that, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, bomb. Absolute bomb. And that's supposed to be your introduction of Kang. We know how that whole thing with the Jonathan Majors scenario went, right? But that was an absolute bomb. Then you rebounded with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And even though it did not make more money than Guardians Volume 3, or Guardians Volume 2 did, this is Guardians Volume 3 rather, even though it did not make the same amount of money that Guardians Volume 2 did a couple of years prior, it still made over $860 million and was still the most successful Marvel Studios film of that year, because later that year, the Marvels bombed. And it's unfortunate because, one, I don't think Quantumania is that bad. I really don't. And two, I think the Marvels is much better than people give it credit for. I really do. I feel like the audience should have turned out more for that one. But their release structure was all wonky, and there are other issues with respect to the MCU and what was happening in Phase 4 and going into Phase 5 that certainly affected the perception of the franchise. But the reality of the situation was that was the year that we got besieged and flooded with 9 comic book movies, right? We had, or what, 8 or 9 comic book movies, if I'm not mistaken. We had 3 from Marvel. We had 4 from DC because it was the swan song of the DCEU. All of those failed. Every last one of those bombed, right? Including Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, if you're really counting it, even though that made the most money out of any of it. But Shazam! Fear of the Gods bombed. The Flash bombed. Blue Beetle bombed. And I do agree with Dave the Film Junkie that Blue Beetle probably certainly was the best film out of the 4 that came out. Even though if I were ranking those 4 that year, I would have said Blue Beetle, then The Flash, then Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and then like far distant fourth, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. It wasn't a horrible movie, but it was just a paint by numbers movie. But at any rate, the general audience wasn't gravitating towards seeing all those movies at the theater, so it was too much, way too much there, right? So I think that kind of hid what was happening, at least as far as the perception of Marvel Studios went. And then what really hit it was that they came out with one movie in 2024, and that was Deadpool and Wolverine. And of course, that breaks $1 billion. I mean, come on, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine. You know, the saying goodbye, a proper goodbye to the Fox X-Men era for a third or fourth time, right? Like all of that piled into that movie and made that movie a massive financial success. We all loved it. Like so many of us loved it in that regard. I shouldn't say we all loved it. I'm sure somebody out there didn't care for it. But that was the whole Marvel is back. Marvel is returned. Now they're going to get back to business and now they're going to get back to dominating, right? That's 2024. You get to 2025. They had 3 theatrical releases, right? We've documented this. We all know this, guys. Between Captain America Brave New World in February, Thunderbolts in May, and Fantastic Four in late July, right? Was it July? Yeah, it was late, or was it June? I forget. Either June or July. I can't remember. I think it was July. Yes, it was July, right? Between those 3 MCU films, not a one of them eclipsed Superman at the box office. The first DCU film. Superman made over $600 million. Fantastic Four made $525 million. Thunderbolts made what? I think Thunderbolts might have made. Did it make less than Captain America: Brave New World? I think it might have. Truthfully, I'd have to. Here, let's do a quick check here at Box Office Mojo if I can remember how to type properly. Good grief. It's always, trying to look these up on the fly. But with respect to Thunderbolts, what was Thunderbolts box office? Thunderbolts box office for that year. Wow, now of course it's acting slow. It won't look it up properly. Here we go. Thunderbolts box office is 382.4 million worldwide. Captain America Brave New World, just look for Brave New World. Don't type anything else around. Captain America Brave New World, yep, 415. So technically, Captain America Brave New World made more money than Thunderbolts, right? And none of those movies, including Fantastic Four First Steps, made more than Superman. So you had a year where the DC film, the brand new incarnation of Superman, beat out not 1, not 2, but 3 Marvel films in the same year. And you couple that with Tatiana Maslany, or not Maslany, good grief, no. Tatiana Maslany is good. She's awesome. She's She-Hulk. No, Tatiana Siegel, the clickbait writer that got drummed out of Rolling Stone and started writing hit pieces, and she's the one that wrote that hit piece about is Marvel dead, essentially. This was like a year or so ago she wrote that piece. You couple that and then you start to see the cracks in the armor with the perception of Marvel Studios and the MCU, and that opened the floodgates for Scooper Madness to just feast on them with all these rumors, right? And the thing is, they have nowhere else to turn because people like Jeff Snyder, they can't get away with the same shit they used to get away with DC anymore, right? DC Films, Jeff Snyder, and Scooper Madness could say whatever they want, and they can get their audience to believe whatever they want and buy their shit hook, line, and sinker. The engagement and the rage and all that, I mean, it ran rampant. They profited heavily off of the dysfunction of DC Films, certainly under Jeff Johns and John Berg, and definitely under Walter Hamada with Toby Emmerich and Ann Sarnoff and all those jokers, all those morons, right? Scooper Madness profited heavily off of their incompetence and off of their unwillingness and their inability to control the narrative PR-wise. And then DC Studios is created. James Gunn takes center stage, and what does he do? One of the first, I mean, aside from, proclaiming himself like he is the not proclaiming, he was hired to be the creative head of the studio. He is in charge of the creative. right? And Peter Safran is in charge of the production, the business, and whatnot, right? So one of the first things that Gunn does, one of the most important things Gunn does, is he gets on social media because he's active on social media, and he is the debunker. He understands on a level, and this is something that I said at the time he got hired. I said, listen, whoever's in charge of DC Studios must understand that they got to do something about Scooper Madness. They got to do something about these narratives. They got to do something about controlling the perception so that all this nonsense doesn't keep running wild and stoking the fire of rage bait among the fans. And he understands that. He totally understands that, and that's why when it comes to Scooper Madness, that's why he'll call stuff out. Because and I've seen this particular narrative. I've seen people say, and maybe even some of you have said, that he posts too much. I know Ben Everts at Real Anarchy, and I know even Dave the Film Junkie and a number of others have said he responds to people that he shouldn't respond to. And yes, there are definitely trolls and bots out there with 10 followers and no avatar, no profile pic that he responds to. Yes. But the thing is, when it comes to these narratives, when it comes to what he does respond to, what he does debunk, right? Like, that's important. Like, I would rather he overshoot and respond to trolls that are just trying to rage bait and still debunk something than let things run rampant. He can't allow what happened in the DCEU days with the PR to ever happen again. He cannot allow Scooper Madness to manipulate fans' behavior and mentality like that again. He's got to squash shit. He's got to control the narrative. He's got to be like on top of things with respect to, well, what are they leaking here and what are they saying there? Even more so now because of AI and all the lies and all the nonsense, right? And I've had to deal with this. Like I've told my coworkers at work, because I have one coworker in particular. A couple of times in the last year or so, he'd be like, "Hey, did you see this? Did you hear about so and so getting cast in a new Marvel movie?" And I'm like, "Where did you hear that from?" And he goes, "Facebook." And I'm like, "No, absolutely not. Do not pay attention to a single thing that you see from a Facebook posting or Facebook group, because AI and lies and nonsense and falsity and fake shit is rampant there. It's bad enough on Twitter/X. It's bad enough on Threads. It's bad enough on other social media platforms, Instagram as well. It's probably the worst, in my opinion, on Facebook. And so, with all this misinformation and disinformation that is put out there to mislead people into believing shit's real, you got to have somebody in an official capacity to swat all that shit down. And again, getting back to what Jamie Broadnax was saying at Black Girl Nerds, her whole video is talking about how do not buy into any rumor, do not buy into any nonsense, do not buy into any story unless it comes directly from Marvel Studios. Unless you hear it directly from Kevin Feige or the Marvel Council or somebody there, unless it's even from an official trade, right? The things that she was saying in this video, the reason it was surreal is because it's things that I've been saying for years about DC. Things that I've warned people, hey, don't buy this until... I still have to say it now, because Gunn doesn't respond to everything. For all the people that say he responds to too much, there's still a lot that he doesn't respond to. He doesn't live on social media like a lot of the rest of us do, being honest with you, okay? So the thing is, I still have to tell people when I see a rumor that looks like bullshit or comes from the usual suspects at the Rep or, the Cosmic Book News, which is that's just some nerd mega nonsense. And of course, they forwarded the story about Blade being canceled, right? All of those rags forwarded it because whether it's true or not, they just want the engagement. They just want the rage. They just want the clicks, right? And I've said for years, don't pay attention to that shit. And I have to still tell people with DC and with Marvel to not pay attention to that shit. But now we're at the point where we have to tell that to Marvel fans. Don't pay attention to shit until you see it officially from Marvel Studios, until you see it officially from Kevin Feige. So yeah, all of the things that I used to say about DC back in the DC Films era, the DCEU era, Jamie Broadnax of Black Girl Nerds is saying that about Marvel now. And she's 100% correct. She's 1,000% correct. Marvel Studios does need someone to be a James Gunn. And whether that is Kevin Feige himself or whether it's Louis D'Esposito or whoever's left on the Marvel Council, whoever it is, get a social media presence, slap this shit down. And I understand on some level Disney and Marvel Studios probably doesn't consider it important because they've never had to deal with it before. But in the last year or two, the perception of the MCU has taken a hit. It has taken a hit. And all this stuff is ebbs and flows, right? Marvel is as successful as it is for all this time, and now DC is starting to rise up and be more successful in terms of the presence, right? In terms of the perception. Okay, the strong feelings that people had about the DCEU, the polarization, we're not seeing that here with the DCU so far. We're seeing a lot of wait and see. We're seeing a lot of curiosity, but the Superman got certified fresh within like a half hour of it being, thrown on the hell site, Rotten Tomatoes, right? People are still talking about the impact, socially speaking, of that film. Case in point, you know how people talked about the Gurkos and Baravia and their whole thing with Jarhanpur being an allegory for either Israel and Palestine or for Russia and Ukraine. Well, now, lately, truthfully, you can call Planet Watch ICE. You can. You most certainly can. That's the type of social discussion that people are having with Superman. And this is half a year. This movie's been out for more than half a year now, right? We all got it digitally. We all have access to it. You watch it on HBO Max. I got the Steelbook, right? And like that's the type of staying power that this DC movie, this first movie in DC Studios is having, right? So we're seeing a shift in the dynamic. We're seeing a shift in the perception of these franchises. And that does not mean that Marvel has just gone all the way down, but it does mean that they're vulnerable. More vulnerable than they've been in the first 15 or so years of the MCU's existence. And now they do have to be concerned, I think, about rumors running rampant about Scooper Madness feasting on their fans. They do. They do. You should not ignore that because you do not want to get into a position like DC was in the DC Films era before James Gunn and Peter Safran took over with DC Studios. You don't want to be in that realm beforehand where it was just rumors running rampant and the content creators going with it for engagement bait and rage bait and whatnot and them profiting off of your misery. You don't want that. You do not want that. I say that as a DC fan that was in the middle of it. And any DC fan, all of you listening, you know where I'm coming from with this. We can all agree that, whether you think James Gunn says too much to people or not, the fact that he's out there debunking things is not a negative. It's a good thing. He should be debunking shit. And he does debunk shit. And that's a good deal. He has that perception. Marvel needs somebody like that now, too. They do. They most certainly do. Because it's easy for us to say, don't listen to Scooper Madness. It's easy for us to say, never listen to an asshole like Jeff Snyder, a.k.a. Chattanooga FBI. Never listen to those people, right? It's real easy for us to say that. But for others in the general audience, right? All it takes is for your mother or your father who is not, technologically challenged, but they still have a Facebook so that they can keep touch with the cousins and the aunties and the grandbabies and all that stuff. And they look and go, hey, did you see the Blade movie got canceled? That's a travesty. I can't believe I like Mahershala Ali. And you got to explain to mom and dad, no, the Blade movie did not get canceled. That is not official. That's some nonsense from Scooper Madness. But I saw it on Facebook. There's a whole AI video and everything. That video was AI, mom, dad, whatever. To spare yourself that nonsense. Marvel needs to debunk this shit, right? And whether they think it's important now or not, it is something that they should take into account. I completely agree with Black Girl Nerds with respect to that, most certainly. So it's crazy to be here, isn't it? As a DC fan, it's crazy to think if you'd have told us 10 years ago that Marvel Studios would be in this position where they need to look to what DC Studios is doing for PR, of all things, for PR, right? It's one thing we're talking about structure, we're talking about tone, right? Because James Gunn, I love the fact that he is devout in building the DCU very differently than the MCU, and he's not going to give us MCU 2.0. We're going to find out for sure when we see Supergirl and Lanterns and Clayface later this year. But like when we talk about PR, like of all things, to say that DC has a better lock on PR and a better lock on debunking things than Marvel Studios is crazy, isn't it? It is a crazy timeline to be in a good way, right? I mean, not that we want Marvel Studios to, just knuckle under to that stuff, but still just the role reversal is crazy. It's surreal. It really is. But I completely agree with her. They need to definitely address this and they need to not ignore it and they need to not let Scooper Madness pick off the bones of their fans like they are in a negative fashion for engagement nonsense. They really do. Squash Jeff Snyder and all these fools, seriously. The same way that James Gunn is, right? Scooper Madness is pissed off at James Gunn because he's cutting into their revenue, because he's calling out their lies, and they can't spread them as far as they used to be able to. Kevin Feige needs to do the exact same thing. Squash these assholes once and for all. And I tell you what, Alex De Silva was talking about this on Fight Chat yesterday. He was talking about how he felt, was there a possibility that all the AI stuff might push people away from Scooper Madness because they know that it's fake nonsense? And I said, no, unfortunately, I think it probably will go the other way, where they will believe in it, will push them more into Scooper Madness. Well, the thing that will absolutely crush Scooper Madness is the studios calling them out. The studios saying, no, this is bullshit in that regard. And so that is something, James Gunn is already doing it for DC Studios. Kevin Feige needs to do it for Marvel Studios. Hit Scooper Madness on both sides with both franchises. Don't let them get away with a damn thing as far as peddling lies and nonsense going forward. So yeah, I salute Jamie Broadnax and Black Girl Nerds for posting that video. I completely agree with it. Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, if you're listening, I know you're not, but if you are, take a note from James Gunn, Peter Safran, and DC Studios. Get somebody out there to debunk Jeff Snyder, Chattanooga FBI, and all his other cohorts and morons that are ready to feast upon all the rumor mills to, basically continue trashing your franchise as you go through some struggles that you've never gone through before, as you try to, navigate yourself through this, this resurgence, right? Getting the band back together through Doomsday and Secret Wars, and then coming out on the other side of it with a new direction involving the X-Men and whatnot. So yeah, definitely, completely agree with it. Get going on that for sure. Don't let it fester, because you let it fester, you'll end up in a similar position as the DCEU, and I don't want that. I don't want that for the MCU. I think most of us rational individuals don't want that for the MCU. So yeah, get it going. Scooper Madness is a scourge, needs to be put down. And James Gunn has already done his part. Kevin Feige needs to step up and do his. Completely agree with that, for sure. So to wrap things up for this week, I do want to briefly talk about the two new franchise shows that we have debuting this month. One for Star Trek and one for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The first one, of course, is Starfleet Academy, Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which is premiering this week on Thursday, January 15th on Paramount+. That's undergone a decent amount of scrutiny and some gatekeeping nonsense from the Star Trek fans in general, which is no surprise to me from Star Trek fans whatsoever. The other show, of course, is Wonder Man, the MCU series. That's premiering on January 27th, so we're still a couple of weeks away from that. I thought it was the 24th, but the 24th is a Saturday, so no, it's the 27th. That's on a Tuesday. So we got Starfleet Academy on a Thursday, the 15th, and then we've got Wonder Man on a Tuesday, the 27th. All right, cool. Both of these shows both of these franchise shows, long-time franchises at this point. Star Trek, obviously, much older than the MCU, but still, both these franchises, these shows are dealing with different challenges, and I want to talk about both of them because I feel like there's a little bit of connection here, there's a little bit of relatability here, but I really just want to address the nonsense that I think is happening with both shows. And in one case, it's the fans, in the other case, it's the studio. In the case of Starfleet Academy, it's the fans. And to old school Star Trek fans that have such a problem with this show based off of the CW style poster and the framing of the kids and the Starfleet Academy premise, the fact that it's a sequel, or essentially it's a spinoff of Star Trek Discovery and not a spinoff of Picard or Strange New Worlds, right? It's not happening at a time period that you personally would like to see, right? The fact that you are looking at the trailers and the clips and it's not the Star Trek it's not what you grew up with, it's not what the fact that there are so many of you, and I've seen this, that have come out with the whole Gene Roddenberry is rolling over in his grave nonsense. All of you get a grip. Every last one of you get a flippin' grip, because the reality of the situation, as I've said many times before, Star Trek does not belong to you. Does not. Star Trek does not belong exclusively to you. Star Trek has been around for nearly 60 years. We're in the midst of the 60th anniversary of Star Trek. It will be September 8th this year. Will be the 60th anniversary of Star Trek. Star Trek will have been around for 6 decades. You know what that means? It means it's been around for multiple generations. How many generations are we talking about here? Well, the boomers are the ones who grew up with the original series, right? Because they would have been 9, 10, 11 years old in that regard with respect to the original series. So then you have Gen X after that, right? And that means they would have come up through the era of probably the original series movies, right? The TOS films, right? So we're talking, Motion picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, right? That's their heyday with respect to Star Trek. Okay, right? And then maybe they also transitioned into TNG. In fact, a lot of them, I'm sure, did transition into TNG because that was in the 80s, right? And they were still in their, teens, late teens, early 20s, something like that, right? Like that's where that came into play, or maybe even younger than that, truthfully. That might have even been like 15 to 20, like younger in that regard, right? I don't remember the parameters of Gen X as far as years. I do know the parameters of millennials, and that is from 1980 to 1996. And I will tell you that we grew up with those old school shows. We grew up with TNG, we grew up with DS9, we grew up with Voyager. Those were our shows, right? And then maybe Enterprise a little bit towards the tail end, as we were leaving high school, graduating high school, going into college in that regard. Maybe some of us were graduating high school in that regard, right? Like Enterprise, that little 4-year period, and then also the TNG movies as well, right? That's what we grew up with, right? So then what did Gen Z have? Gen Z honestly had Discovery, and that was late. That was very late. It was a case where it really was outside of Gen Z when Discovery premiered in 2017 because Gen Alpha premiered in 2013. So you're talking about their brand new Star Trek show being later. So you know what? Truthfully, Gen Z's introduction to Star Trek wasn't Discovery. It was the Kelvin timeline. It was like Amr. Amr, perfect example, right? He has not seen, he's only just now seeing episodes of TOS, and he's been watching TNG and he's been watching DS9 now, right? Like he got into this franchise through Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and Zoe Saldana and Carl Urban and John Cho and Anton Yelchin, may he rest in peace, and Simon Pegg, right? He got in through those movies, right? When Viacom and CBS were split apart, right? He got in through the Kelvin timeline. That was Gen Z's Star Trek, right? Remember how much you were upset about that, old school Trek fans? You hated that because it was too flashy. It was too fast. It was too much action. It wasn't cerebral enough for you. Give me a flippin' break. I've been a Trekkie for over 30 years. The soul and essence, the heart and soul of Star Trek, all through those 3 films, without question. They understood the essence of the characters. They understood the essence of the show very well, as far as I'm concerned. Subjectively speaking, you're welcome to disagree. But I think you're being miserable if you disagree, to be honest with you. That's my own subjective opinion. But that was Gen Z's entry point to Star Trek. So now, how about Gen Alpha? Well, Gen Alpha's got Discovery. And maybe they've also got Strange New Worlds. And now for younger, we now younger than that, right? Because what's the generation after Gen Alpha? There's a generation after Gen Alpha. There has to be a generation after Gen Alpha. I have to Google this. I had to Google this immediately. What is, here, learn how to type, Ray. What is the generation after Gen Alpha? The generation after Gen Alpha, born 2010 to 2024, is Generation Beta, typically defined as those born from 2025 to 2039. Okay, so technically, we're still Gen Beta is just now being born. So this particular Starfleet Academy series is still going to get lumped in with Gen Alpha as far as what they are processing. But now, this is going to be a show with Starfleet Academy that is going to appeal to Gen Alpha as they've gotten older. So they're going to reminisce. They're going to reminisce about their times when they were that age or really going into this age, right? Because now, 2010 to 2024, we're talking at this point, those kids are now 14, 15 years old, right? So yes, it's targeted for them, right? So the idea, like all the stuff that you're seeing in the Paramount Plus era, is for a younger generation of Star Trek viewers. No, it's not going to be exactly like the original series. No, it's not going to be like TNG or anything that you grew up with. It's not. It's not supposed to be. Gene Roddenberry himself even said, before he passed many, many years ago, that he would like to see what Star Trek becomes in the future. And yes, I know, we all know the stories about how stodgy he was and about how strict he was and about how Rick Berman and the others constantly fought with him for stuff on TNG and with the other shows and whatnot. And it wasn't until after he passed that they were able to do stuff like DS9 and Voyager and take it in a different direction. Yes, I totally get that. But he still understood, like that was how he felt. Like personally, as the creator of the franchise, he still understood that generationally Star Trek was meant to evolve. And it is evolving. It has evolved. You can't just do a Starfleet Academy show that is a carbon copy of what you want to see as an old school Star Trek fan. Because it's not for you. It's for your grandkids, being completely honest with you. Your grandkids or hey, depending on how old you are, maybe your great grandkids in that regard, right? That's who it's for. And it's also for those of us open-minded Trekkies that enjoy the entirety of the franchise. Like me. I'm somebody that lives on the island of. There really is no bad Star Trek. And that's even like with me calling Star Trek V The Final Frontier the worst Star Trek movie, but I've softened on it in years because I really don't want to hate movies. I can find some silver linings in that movie. I can find some things that I like, even though that movie is firmly ranked 13th on my list of the 13 Star Trek films. My number one, by the way, is still Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country. But yeah, that's my own subjective opinion with respect to that. And if you want to know how high I have the Kelvin Timeline movies ranked, I'm pretty sure that my favorite Kelvin Timeline film, Star Trek Beyond, is like third on my list, in my opinion, right? So I know what I'm talking about with respect to the franchise itself, and I have an open mind for all of it. I have enjoyed all of the Paramount Plus era of Star Trek. I've enjoyed all of Discovery. I own all 5 seasons of Discovery. I own all 3 seasons of Star Trek Picard. I own the entirety, all 5 seasons of Star Trek Lower Decks. That was the animated Star Trek sitcom I never knew I needed. And it was outstanding. Loved every second of it. Every self-referential, fourth wall breaking minute of it, truthfully. Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid and everybody, Don Lewis, Phil Lamar, everybody else involved, Fred Tatasciore, and all the other the cameos that we got. Mike McMahon, thank you. I salute all of you for the greatness that you gave us with Lower Decks. Okay. And I am more than ready for Starfleet Academy. I know it's going to be different. I know it's going to feel different, right? I know it's not supposed to be exactly the same, but I'm okay with that, right? Even when they gave you that trailer about a week or so ago that fused in all the clips from all the older shows. So you heard Kirk say risk is our business. You heard Cisco say his things. You heard Janeway. You heard all the others. And you heard Picard, right? You hear all the voices of the prior captains, giving this speech. That was great. That was fantastic. That's the legacy, right? Because that's another thing that we're going to get. We're going to hear, we're going to feel the legacy of the franchise in a show like this that's taking place in the 32nd century after Star Trek Discovery. Like that's what it's supposed to be in that regard, right? So the fans that want to continue to be closed-minded and gatekeeping, you know what? Get out of my fan base. Seriously, get the hell out. Go away. Because you're not exhibiting the open-mindedness that a Star Trek fan, I feel, should be exhibiting. And who am I? Listen, this is just my subjective opinion. You can agree or disagree with me all you like. But that's my perspective. If you can't at least say that Starfleet Academy isn't your tempo and you move on and you go back and rewatch your reruns of TNG, DS9, Voyager on Pluto TV incessantly, however you wish, which I do as well, right? If you can't at least respect the people that are into the Paramount Plus shows and want to watch Starfleet Academy, and then what the hell are you doing in the fan base? Seriously. Like, you can watch your stuff. You can watch what got you into Star Trek with impunity, especially now. Like I said, it's all free on Pluto TV, which is the fast action, the free ad supported television streaming app that allows you to watch damn near all of Star Trek, like 24/7, 365. And they also on occasion will break out the movies. You can watch the movies there. You can watch all of that shit with impunity whenever you feel like it. And then let everybody else, let the younger generations, let the open-minded Trekkies enjoy the Paramount Plus era of Star Trek, is what I say. So it's unfortunate that we have this gatekeeping, and I really hope that, that the cast and crew, and not just Holly Hunter, because Holly Hunter's she's been in the game for a long time, so she's been through her share of stuff. But these younger actors, like Karis Brooks and the others that are just now coming into the franchise, I hope that these gatekeepers stay the hell away from them. I hope it doesn't become a toxic situation on social media or elsewhere. I don't want these bots and these trolls and these wastes of space in the Star Trek fandom giving them any shit, because they don't deserve it whatsoever. They're out there adding their new legacy to the franchise, and they should they should be more than welcome to do so, whether you like it or not, right? You cannot care for the show, and it cannot be on your radar, and you leave it alone, and you leave people that enjoy it alone, and you go in your corner and go about your business and watch all the old shit. I will continue to be happier than you and watch all of it. And I love being happier than the gatekeepers. I love that. There will never be a gatekeeper on this earth happier than me. I will always be happier than all of them. That is objective fact, because I don't discriminate. I don't push aside parts of a franchise and go, oh, well, that's awful and I can't believe anyone would watch it because it's not the franchise that I grew up with. Newsflash, old ass. It's not supposed to be the franchise that you grew up with. Not when it's 60 flipping years old. plain and simple. So that's the issue that I definitely wanted to address with respect to Starfleet Academy. It's a fan issue. Gatekeepers rearing their ugly ass heads talking about that show. Now, with respect to Wonder Man, the show premiering on the MCU, that's a studio issue because and I absolutely give Chris Belga, who does the Marvel show, the weekly Marvel show, Marvel, I think it's Marvel Alliance over the Geek Ultimate Alliance guys. He brought this up on Vodka Stream the other night, and I completely, I'm glad he said it because I feel like it's one of those cases where if I say it, it's going to be like, well, of course Ray's going to say that, not only because I am black, but also because I am a champion, a very vocal champion of representation matters. It's kind of obvious when I say it. But when somebody like Chris says it, who also believes in representation matters, I should say, but when he is, of a different persuasion, if you will, right? The lighter hue, as comedian Ali Sadiq would put it, when he brings up that it seems like Marvel is promoting Wonder Man the same way that they promoted Echo and Ironheart, and that all three of them seem to have the same thing in common with respect to minority leads. And what the hell is up with that? When he says that, it's a bigger deal. It is. It's a bigger deal. And I applaud Chris Belga for saying that. I'm really glad that he said that because, look, guys, we're not trying to make everything about race, but sometimes when it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, what the hell are we supposed to call it? Because seriously, and I've watched Echo and I've watched Ironheart, and I can agree that with respect to promotion, it's not like Marvel pushed those shows in front of us. And then Phil Barker was the one that brought up what was it? Eyes of Wakanda, World of Wakanda, the animated series that I still haven't watched. Unfortunately, I would like to. I need to. But he brought that up, animated, but same thing. Who told us about that? Chris Williams is in that flipping show. Chris Williams is in that show. It is a prequel to the first Black Panther film. How did Marvel promote it? Like, where did Disney promote it, right? Did we see anywhere near the promotion budget that we saw for Daredevil Born Again, or that we're going to see for season 2 of Daredevil Born Again? No, certainly not. Did we see anything close to Doomsday promotion or Spider? No, certainly not. And don't give me this nonsense about how, well, that's movies. You can't compare movies to shows. Look, it's their app, and we're in the streaming era, right? They want more eyeballs. They want more subscribers on Disney Plus. Do they not? Most certainly they do. Why aren't they promoting these shows as hard as they're promoting the others? Where are we at with that? What's going on here? She-Hulk got more promotion. It did. And I'm fine with that. I have no issues with that. But the fact of the matter is it's not even. And consistently now we're seeing it with minority-led projects. They're not getting the same press. They're not getting the same PR. And I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't. I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't want to hear any rationalization. I just want an explanation of why you haven't fixed it, why you haven't changed it. Why did you dismiss Echo? Why did you not have that much faith in Echo in the first place? You just kind of quietly launched it. I watched Echo last year. Did I think it was the greatest of the MCU shows? No, but I still liked what it was. I still enjoyed it. I still appreciate the fact that it exists because I did really like that character and what Alaqua Cox did with that character from Hawkeye over into that show. If you were like, why, if you weren't going to promote the damn thing, why would you even make the damn spinoff, right? The same thing with Dominic and her playing Riri Williams in Ironheart. I can't remember her last name all of a sudden. Like, here, I have to Google this now. Like, I'm Googling a lot tonight because sometimes I can't always recall the information. Dominic Thorne, thank you. Like, you introduced Dominic Thorne as Riri Williams in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Fantastic way to launch her into the MCU. And then when her show comes out, you don't do shit with respect to promotion. It just quietly is out there. You release a couple of clips a week or two beforehand that have Ryan Coogler involved in it. And why did you do that? Because Ryan Coogler had just gotten done releasing Sinners, and you're like, oh well, here, let's just throw a bone out there for this show. What gives Marvel Studios? What's the deal? Why? Why are you just scaling back on it? I liked Ironheart. Ironheart was really good personally. Not a perfect series, but none of these series are perfect, subjectively speaking, in that regard. But I had a good time watching it. I enjoy the fact that it exists, but now because of the lack of marketing and the waning, like the lack of promotional presence for the show, I don't know that I'm ever going to get to own it physically. Right? They're not going to put it on Blu-ray, are they? I wish they would. I would buy it in a second, but I'm still waiting for them to put Ms. Marvel on Blu-ray in Glorious Steelbook. They haven't done that yet either, you know? And I don't remember how the promotion was for that show. I don't. But that's another, is that going to be like the token excuse? Like, well, no, they promoted Ms. Marvel, so you can't say, well, no, we still can. Because it's not like promoting Ms. Marvel means that they're allowed to ignore Echo, Ironheart, and in this case, Wonder Man. And sorry, it's the evidence is there, guys. Like it's sitting there in front of us. If you weren't that confident in the show, why would you even make it? Why should it even exist? The fact that you decided to commit a budget to it, that you hired creatives and actors and crew and all that, the fact that you decided to do the show means that once it exists, you should promote the hell out of it. You should. And don't give me this, you have a finite budget. Figure it the hell out. You want people to subscribe to Disney Plus, do you not? Especially now, because you're however many months away from the possibility of Netflix being insurmountable in terms of library, because their already biggest library is about to become gigantic with respect to adding Warner Brothers content should that deal, actually, finalize and go through, right? So you need as many eyeballs, as many subscribers, as many credit card numbers to subscribe to Disney Plus as possible. Why wouldn't you promote your stories? Why wouldn't you promote your shows? Why wouldn't you promote this show, Wonder Man? Why is it like a smattering of spots here and there? Why are there people that haven't heard of this? How come this isn't as big of a deal as WandaVision? How come this isn't as big a deal as Loki, either season 1 or 2? How come this isn't as big a deal as Hawkeye? Why? Because it doesn't involve an Avenger? That's bullshit. It's a show that you committed money and resources to. You should be promoting the hell out of it, and you're not. And you did this with Ironheart. You did this with Echo. And without giving us some type of reasoning behind it, what are we supposed to deduce? What are we supposed to infer? Because all the excuses we could think about don't make any sense. If you're going to make a show, you should promote it. You shouldn't not promote it. Otherwise, why the hell are you making the show? So, it's unfortunate that we have to call this into question, that we have to have this discussion, but unfortunately we do. I'm just not seeing it, right? And no, don't give me this nonsense about how, well, you got to wait until no. We're getting promotional teasers for Avengers Doomsday 11 months in advance. Okay? We're getting that stuff like almost a full year before that movie release. That movie doesn't release until December 18th. That's a big deal, right? And mind you, you can sit there and call it, well, it's an Avengers movie. Of course it's a big deal. No, the bigger deal is that you need people that want to watch all their stuff at home and can't afford to go to the movie theaters. You want to remind them that in December, there's going to be an Avengers movie for them to go check out. Otherwise, they're just going to be sitting waiting for the next thing to pop up on Disney Plus if they're a subscriber to Disney Plus. In the case of Wonder Man, you don't even need to have them buy a ticket. You just need to have them hand over their credit card number, subscribe to Disney Plus on or before the 27th, and there you have it. You've got them held hostage. You've got that money. You have that income. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever that you decided to start promoting Doomsday 11 months in advance and you're doing barely anything for Wonder Man. Makes absolutely no fiscal or financial sense at all. None. There is no logistical explanation for it. I defy anybody to come up with one. And you know what? Be careful. Tread lightly, because it just, where is the business sense for that? You made a show. Promote it. Tell people about it. Let them know. Like, make a bigger deal out of it than what you're making now. I don't give a shit who's the lead. Lead could be, white. Lead could be red. All the white-led shows get way more promotion than this. Daredevil Born Again Season 2 is going to get way more promotion than this. It is. We know this. We know this for a fact. It's going to happen, right? It's not just because it's Daredevil, right? And if anything, truthfully, for the people who are like, well, it's Daredevil, of course it's going to get... No, that makes even less sense. People know who Daredevil is. Nobody knows who Wonder Man is. Very few people, not no one. Very few people know who Wonder Man is. People knew who Iron Man was in 2007 more than they know who Wonder Man is in 2007, right? But before, like, the big MCU resurgence, Iron Man was a more popular character than Wonder Man, right? That's all the more reason you need to pump more promotion into it, because you need to inform the audience, hey, this dude has got a new show in our franchise. It makes no flippin' sense unless it's the obvious. So if you don't want it to be racism, If you don't want it to be some form of bigotry, if you don't want it to be something that's institutionalized, like I've been talking about this whole show, then what gives? What's the deal? Because I don't see any other reason for it. I really don't. And it's unfortunate. It's sad. It's terrible that we have to think about it this way. That we even have to consider this. But again, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, what are we supposed to infer? So it's a shame. I will be watching it. I will be watching that show, and we'll certainly be devoting episodes of Flightbox to it, because just like it was with Ironheart, I felt like Ironheart definitely needed the promotion and the exposure, because it wasn't getting it from the studio. So why not get it from podcasters? Why not get it from those of us in these circles? Because if we don't, then who the hell is going to watch the damn show? Clearly, Disney does not care about people watching Wonder Man, just like they didn't care about people watching Ironheart or Echo. And it doesn't matter how you felt about any of those shows. It's not the point. It has nothing to do with it. The point is, you made a show, promote it. Like, otherwise, why even make the damn show in the first place? So just wanted to talk about that, because definitely that came up, and we are a couple weeks away from it, into January, and yeah, it's a very different situation than what the Starfleet Academy show is going through, because at least the studio is promoting that show, right? Like, Paramount is well in front of, like, they are promoting Starfleet Academy. Yes, Paramount Plus, they had Holly Hunter on CBS Morning News, right? And yes, of course, the same parent company and all that. Yeah, got it. But still, they're making the rounds. You can find the Starfleet Academy trailer a lot easier than you can find the damn Wonder Man trailer. That's for sure. So, yeah. I'm going to be watching both shows. Stay tuned for episodes of Flightbox on that this month. And, hey, we'll see how it goes in that regard. But, yeah, it's unfortunate. Whether Disney has what they think is a legitimate answer for it or not, it's unfortunate. You make a show, why wouldn't you promote it? But such is the world that we live in, and we'll just have to see how it goes, right? That's all we're at. That's where we're at right now with fans. And that is going to do it for this particular episode of the FliteCast for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening to this show. Thank you so much for all of your support to the FliteCast. I could not do this without any of you, those of you that listen dutifully on a weekly basis. If you have any thoughts with respect to any of what I've talked about, and I know we're going to have thoughts about the Golden Globes. I know we are. We're going to have thoughts about award season for sure, especially after we see the nominees, who wins and who doesn't and whatnot, right? If you have any thoughts about award season and the Golden Globes, if you have any thoughts with respect to Marvel Studios getting a James Gunn type to debunk all of Scuba Madness's nonsense on their end finally at this point, right? Or if you have any thoughts with respect to whether or not you're going to watch either Starfleet Academy or Wonder Man, and how you feel about the fans gatekeeping Starfleet Academy and the studio gatekeeping Wonder Man, right? Either way, if you have any thoughts on all that, or anything with respect to movies, TV, and other sort of media that you want to join the feedback circle on, you know where to find me on Threads and on Instagram at the FliteCast, on BlueSky at FliteCast. You can comment on the posting for this particular episode at the FliteCast YouTube page, the FliteCast YouTube channel, I should say, youtube.com/the FliteCast. There's also the FliteCast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, have a great week, a great and safe week, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.